but I'll tell you what, it's been a fantastic start to conference here today, this virtual online conference. And my thanks to all the people behind the scenes who are making this work. It's been flowing brilliantly, but also the fantastic contributions we've had all the way through the day, from Joe opening it up right at the beginning, Annalise, absolutely superb. We just heard from Jim, of course, and you know, the icing on the cake there, Kia, this morning, speaking to us as well. So it's been brilliant already, but I have to say, this is going to top it all, this session that we have, because this session now is going to be looking at cooperating through COVID. We've heard so much this morning about the fantastic things that grassroots cooperators do. Well, that's what we're going to hear about right here, right now, how it works in action on the ground. So what we're going to do is we've got a range of speakers from right across the country, right across the nations, doing all sorts of different things. They're going to speak to us for about 5 minutes. My job is just to try and keep them all to time, because I think they could speak for hours to you there. So we're going to showcase the difference that cooperatives can really make and the application in practice of our principles and our values. And I think this is just going to make the case very, very well indeed for the fact that we should have a much bigger, growing and better cooperative sector. For those who don't know me, I'm Hugh Iranca Davis. I'm the member of the Senedd for Ogmore in South Wales, and I have the privilege of chairing the Labour Senedd group of cooperators as well, which is a huge group. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to our contributors, and we have Councillor Eve Holt with the Unicorn Co-op. We have Councillor Joanna West working with work between the Council and the Central England Co-op. We've got Heather isn't able to be with us, and we send our regards to Heather because we understand she's got an illness in the family this morning that's come up. So apologies from Heather and our regards to her. We've got Nick Small with a cycling co-op Peloton. Paul O'Hara, who I know from Drive Taxis in Cardiff. Welcome to you this morning as well, Paul. Looking forward to hearing from you. And Lauren Newlands from the co-op group in Beath and Kilburney. So we're going to do it in that order. So I'm going to hand straight across now for 5 minutes to Eve Holt. Eve, it's all yours.
Fantastic. Well, it's absolutely brilliant to be here with so many wonderful fellow cooperators. So thank you. So I'm a Labour councillor in Chorlton in Manchester. I'm also a co-op member and hope to be a Labour and co-op councillor as of May. And I'm really, really proud that in Chorlton we have a number of co-ops, probably the most well-known being Unicorn Grocery. But I'm actually here today to tell the story of our newest co-op, which is Chorlton Bike Deliveries, which, as you say, has been a real example in practice of how our co-op values, our solidarity, has really thrived in some ways at this, or been highlighted at this point over the last 6 months, and once again proven how the co-op movement is a very real and powerful catalyst for growing power and trust and ownership and agency and kindness in our communities, and how it's really helped to sow the seeds, I believe, for a much greener, fairer, stronger and more equitable society. So just to share a little bit about what is Chorlton Bike Deliveries and how did it come about. So it started back in March as just a small group of people, of local residents, who connected via our mutual aid networks. And they didn't know each other at the time. They came together as strangers, but with a common mission to look at how they could do more to provide more deliveries, but via bike, to people who were shielding or otherwise were struggling to access key essentials locally. And as I said, they didn't know each other. A number of us, myself included, had connected them, recognising them as catalysts with shared values and a shared mission. And on the 22nd of October, they'll turn 6 months old. they're well on the way to becoming an established sustainable co-op, which is absolutely fantastic. And I've got some of the data for some of those that like data. They now work with 7 local businesses, local co-ops, local independents, and local community groups, including the likes of Unicorn Workers Co-op. They've delivered over 800 meals in the last 6 months, tons of bakery and food that would otherwise have gone to waste, including from local co-op stores. And they've reached over 10,000 people on social media, and they have been supported by the GM Co-op Commission and are working with other cooperatives across Europe through the Co-op Cycle Federation, which again I think is great in showing how that real spirit of internationality that we really talked about, international solidarity. So I guess I just wanted to share a little bit about what have been the key ingredients to their success to move at such pace and to bring such sort of kindness at such a scale in such a short period of time. And I think what I've seen, I'm in the core WhatsApp group, and I've seen the pace that they've moved, is when there's such a clear sense of shared purpose and shared values, as we know in the co-op movement, it's enabled a group of strangers to collectively just move forward as an absolute force of goodness. And I think there's a lot to learn from the conditions that have been available that have enabled that to flourish that we can think about elsewhere. Obviously, it looks different for different people in different places, but what we know is that when what you pay attention to grows, and it's really important that events like this really help make visible these examples in our communities of co-ops putting these values into practice. So what's really helped is the fact that there are other local co-ops. So you can't be what you can't see, and we talk about that, don't we, about representation in politics, and I think it's equally important in terms of different models of ownership. So it's really important that we keep showing people that actually there are these alternatives out there that aren't about extracting from communities, they're about investing in the soil and communities, they're about people and place, they're about addressing the inequities, and they are about building this greener, brighter future for all of us and giving hope. So I guess my key tips would be to kind of go and say, who are those key kind of critical yeast that's out there? What are the other ingredients that you need to fold in so that we can then create the conditions to really grow power and really shift this, readdress the balance of power in communities, and recognise it's not a zero-sum game, that this really is, if you create the right conditions like dough, it will grow and it'll grow and grow. And with that comes that trust that we've absolutely heard this morning as being really key. So people feel trust in their own ability to make change, their own sense of power, and trust in those leaders around them who will help them to do that. And that hope that we really can build a better future. So it's been absolutely brilliant, and it's been great that they've been able to be supported by others across the co-op movement, and I can't wait to hear from the rest of you. And I think my final just call to action would be how we make sure that we're constantly looking at who is left out. We need to build these new models, but we need to also go, are we ensuring that if we're growing ownership, growing power, let's continue to look and go, does that reflect the diversity of our communities, and what can we do to go further? So thank you.
Eve, that's absolutely brilliant to kick us off there. Really, really great start hearing what you're doing and how it's grown out of the community, and the ambition to actually use it to spread that message. And that thing about showing people what can be done, how that is the biggest thing that we can do, getting on and actually doing it. It's a great message to start with. So we're going to go, Eve, from you now to Joanna to hear about your experience on the ground during these recent months as well. Over to you, Joanna.
Thanks, Hugh, and thanks, Eve. That was really, really interesting. So I'm Joanna West. I am a Labour and Cooperative Councillor in Derby and also an ambassador on Central England Cooperatives Membership and Community Council. Initially, at the start of the pandemic, I went to help out at one of the Central England stores, and then I was approached to work on quite an exciting project to help provide shopping to those who were shielding. Central England Co-op had started a pilot of the project with another council, but had reached out to Derby City Council to help more people. At a time when the focus had been quite rightly on those who were unable to provide food for themselves, you'll remember that more people were in need of food bank help, but that also the donations to food banks had dropped off considerably, with some people stockpiling items at home and others unable to afford to make contributions. But there was also a huge need to assist those who could afford to shop but were unable to leave their home, and that was the project I was involved with. I worked with the incredible Tanya Noon at Central England, and thanks to my ability to speak both council and cooperative, we were able to get things moving and promote the service to the citizens of Derby. That service was no more than what was already available at all the big supermarkets, though Central England Cooperative had never had this facility before. However, this had the cooperative difference. There was no having to wake up at 5 a.m. to book a shopping slot. People phoned up or emailed their shopping lists, and Tanya and I did their shopping. When items weren't available, remember when flour and pasta were nowhere to be found, we phoned back to discuss alternatives, actually listening to why things were needed and suggesting products that were on the shelves. We were also able to set items aside for customers, as the majority of them became regular shoppers. We made sure where possible we spoke to the same customers each time and built up relationships with them. That was probably one of the nicest and most important elements for me. We were a friendly and reassuring voice for people who were unable to leave their home for months. We talked about baking, talked about changes to the local area. We provided food for lockdown birthday parties, treats for dogs, and we added flowers to the order of our first customer. We were contacted once by people in the West Midlands who were concerned for an elderly relative in Derby. They were able to order and pay for shopping and have the reassurance that their relative had enough to eat without having to risk leaving the safety of their house. The shopping was delivered by volunteers from Derby County Community Trust, who turned up every day with big smiles and a cooperative attitude to help. We encouraged people to become cooperative shoppers and cooperative members. It was great to have shoppers go from, well, you can pop a membership leaflet in with my shopping and I'll read it, to hearing them asking if you were ready to input their membership number at checkout. It was wonderful to hear them tell you that they'd stopped looking for online supermarket shopping slots because they could get everything they needed from us. As things started to get back to normal, we were asked by head office for our feedback on how the scheme had worked and how they could continue to provide for their new members. Since lockdown and this community hub, there is now the option of shopping by phone direct to store, and now Central England have brought in electric vehicles driven by colleagues to deliver shopping to customers. The people we supported during one of the most worrying times of their lives are still supported, and they're not just left to get on with things. We're working out how to arrange a social event for those who only know each other's voices. We thought it would be really lovely at the store that the community hub was based at, where a new cafe has opened, to invite our regular shoppers and our volunteers to all meet up and have a bit of a socially distanced social. But obviously, ongoing situation is making that a bit difficult. In 6 months, Central England Cooperative implemented from scratch a home shopping service, but more importantly, we provided a much needed lifeline to many, and that is the cooperative difference that I am proud to be a part of. Thank you, Hugh.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And it's not only inspiring, but I think you've given me my takeaway quote of the day when you say you spoke both council and cooperative. The benefits of that. I think some of us know that interplay, but that is really great. Thank you so much. Okay, now we mentioned that Heather is unable to join with us today, so we're going to skip over the contribution. She was going to talk about the North Wales Music Co-op and the work they've been doing with an online service through lockdown so that pupils were able to learn from home. I'm sure we'll be able to signpost after this event to that work for anybody who's interested. But we're going to go now to straight to Nick to talk about the work that he's been doing between the council and the cycling co-op peloton. So Nick, we're in your hands.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Hugh, and really great contributions so far. So I'm a Liverpool City Council Labour and Cooperative City Councillor in Liverpool, and I represent Liverpool City Centre. So it's lots of people living in apartments, lots of small independent businesses. I've been working with a cooperative peloton, a cycling cooperative for a few years now. And what they've been doing is lots of work with refurbishing old bikes and selling them on. It was a co-op model, really good organisation. And just before lockdown and COVID, they set up a new arm called Agile, which was they got some cargo bikes and they wanted to start doing deliveries. So when lockdown happened and COVID, they really did two things. So with the refurbishing the bikes, they got a lot more donations of bikes, and cycling became sort of much more prominent. Everyone wanted to cycle. Everyone was going out and buying bikes. So they did two things with that. They did a service where they were giving away free bikes to key workers, and they were doing that. It was very high profile on social media, and really was sort of raising the profile of cycling, raising the profile of sort of supporting key workers. And they were inundated with people donating bikes that they weren't using, old bikes that they had in the garage, and lots of them went out with key workers. And they've also more recently been doing a lot more work with students, particularly those living in halls of residence, sort of outside of the city centre. So in the past, they've done there's been lots of work where there were bus services, were encouraging students to use buses. But obviously with COVID and social distancing, a lot more wanted to use bikes. So they've really increased what they're doing there, working in partnership with all three universities in Liverpool, which is really good. But I wanted really to talk about Agile. So Agile was a project that they began doing with the deliveries before COVID, before sort of all the new way of working, and they really wanted to do something that was environmental and that was green, that was about sustainability, that was about reducing carbon, about doing something high profile, where you saw a lot more cargo bikes and a lot more deliveries going on, particularly across the city centre, but really across the whole of the whole of Liverpool. When lockdown first happened 6 months ago now, with some of the funding that came in to support councils from central government in Liverpool, Arm there devolved an element of that to all of the different wards in the city. So we ended up getting a devolved budget of about £20,000 in a hardship fund that we could use on bespoke projects that were based on the needs in our local communities. So it was I think it was a really good way of doing things, because it was based around community need. We used part of that funding, and it was about £3,000 to £5,000, really to fund Agile. So it was a project that was already there, but what we wanted to do was to increase its impact, but also make it much more relevant to the needs of communities and businesses around COVID. So there were two elements of it. One was sort of like Eve was talking about before, about how you were getting food deliveries in particular to people who were socially, who were shielding, who were self-isolating. One of the needs in our community is you've got a lot of people living in apartments who don't necessarily know the neighbours. There's not a lot of community infrastructure in parts of our ward. There are in some of the long-standing areas, but with some of those new communities, we found that there wasn't that community infrastructure, and people were particularly exposed. So having a means of being able to get food and other deliveries to residents was absolutely vital. So we used Agile to do that. The other aspect of it was around working with other small independent businesses, almost to provide a sort of a Deliveroo model, a cooperative Deliveroo model, where there were a lot more deliveries going on bikes, and we were supporting sort of small independents who otherwise would have been struggling on that. And as part of that, we developed sort of this almost informal cooperative hub So they did a lot of work with 2 other co-ops in the city. The first is a bookshop, News from Nowhere, Radical Bookshop, run as a cooperative, and they offered this sort of not Amazon service where sort of book deliveries, which was really successful, and they linked in with Agile to do that. So it was a really nice thing to do. As part of the funding we put in, it wouldn't have happened otherwise. But obviously they wanted then to commercialize that and to be able to do that in the long term, which I think they've been able to do. The other big co-op that they worked with is we've got a community laundrette that's run as a community and worker cooperative, Kitty's Laundrette, which is about looking at sort of providing an affordable laundrette for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to access, and around the issues around hygiene, poverty, which we're seeing growing in there. To fund some of those activities, they take on commercial contracts with hotels, with restaurants, with cafes, and again they were able to use Agile as part of that to do those deliveries. So I think it's creating future revenues for Agile, and also supporting kitties as well. So again, it's something that we're doing, sort of, you know, promoting cooperatives through that. The final thing I just wanted to mention was sort of where they're looking at going next with some of this, and you know, they really want to expand what they do. So we've been looking at trying to get some of the transport funding that's come into the combined authority, some of the Department for Transport funding, to develop what they're calling as a last mile hub. So it's about working with a big delivery company to bring their deliveries onto the edge of the city centre, where they'll be unpacked, and then Peloton and Agile will go and deliver that sort of the last mile to the city centre and beyond. So you're reducing carbon footprint on that. You're becoming much more sustainable, and we're trying to identify a site to deliver that and bring in some of that funding from Department for Transport. So just to conclude, really, sort of I think the main takeaways from the project is, you know, it's grassroots activity. It was happening anyway through Peloton, through the work that they were doing with cycling. And what we've tried to do, sort of with local funding, very hyper local funding, but also tapping into some of those, some of the bigger funding that's available there, and through Department for Transport and through the combined authority, looking at ways of supporting them to scale up in quite a natural way. And they're doing the activity, but can we support them to do even more with that? And I hope that we can, and I hope that they've got a really bright future, and it's about doing things that are really sustainable.
Thank you very much. I literally lost you right at the end there because I think I went offline. So I hope I'm back on. Thank you so much for that. And there's a wide range of things that you covered there. We're going to move ahead now to Paul from Drive, a taxi co-op in Cardiff, quite local to me. We've heard some tremendously inspiring stories of what's been going on already this morning. I have a little bit of local pride as well in what they've been doing there within Cardiff, because it's quite an innovation. So Paul, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Hugh. I'd like to start with just a little bit of background information about us. We are the Cardiff Taxi Cooperative, the only registered cooperative in Wales, completely driver owned. We were formed in July 2018 by 8 Cardiff cabbies in response to the way self-employed drivers were treated by the more traditional taxi companies and the new app-based companies. After months of preparation and planning, we launched as a not-for-profit company, meaning the members get to keep more of what they earn, on St. David's Day, March the 1st, 2019, as Drive. I mean, after all, what better name to call a taxi company in Cardiff than what everybody calls the driver, Drive. All right, Drive, busy Drive. What time you finishing, Drive? So we launched on St. David's Day, and from the outset, we decided to offer anyone with a concessionary travel pass a 10% discount on taxi fares. Now, we knew that in the long run, we'd make big savings on our expenses. So what better way to pass some of them savings onto some of the most vulnerable members of the community? The elderly, the disabled, the infirm, the visually impaired, they all benefit from cheaper taxi rides with us. But we don't increase our fares either when it's busy and demand is high like the modern app-based companies do. We charge the council tariff, which we believe is fair, and what you see on the meter is what you pay. Always metered and always fair. And we formed an excellent relationship with the visually impaired community in Cardiff, a section of society that traditionally has found it very difficult to find a reliable and trustworthy taxi service. And through that, we obtained the RNIB corporate account, among many, many others. And our reputation grew and spread among various organisations that represent the most vulnerable in our society, such as Cardiff People's First, self-advocacy organisation run by and for people with learning difficulties in Cardiff. Various supported living accommodation providers across the city all use us as their go-to taxi service. They know they'll get an excellent, safe and trustworthy service when they book with us. So in our first year of trading, we saw our membership increase by 100%. And from a zero customer base, we saw nearly 20,000 bookings in the first year. And then COVID struck. We, along with many others, not only in the taxi trade, but in the service industry in general, took a massive hit. Almost overnight, we saw 95% of our pre-booked work cancelled and an 80% drop in daily bookings. So we had to think of ways to help our self-employed members who are still working, and also to help the local community. Now, as self-employed drivers, we were one of the last to have any sort of help from the government. And you could still argue that there's still not enough help for the self-employed. So over the first year's trading, we had accumulated cash reserves with the intention and the hope of purchasing a more advanced dispatch system, which would then help us compete more with the bigger operators in our field. But with the onset of the pandemic, the members unanimously voted to use all this money set aside to pay for free shopping trips, free click and collect services, free prescription collections for those shielded and self-isolating. And we helped over 200 households with, and the majority of which had absolutely no support network around them. A lot of them were referrals from Cardiff County Council. They told them, just if you're having trouble with shopping, ring us, we will sort it out for you free of charge. Like I say, over 200 households we helped with these free shopping trips, free click and collect services, free prescription collections. And on top of that, we also offered a 25% discount on all fares to and from work for NHS workers. Not only NHS workers, but also carers and support workers, a section of the community care industry that is so often overlooked, and helped hundreds of key workers that way. Now, come August, we saw a big spike in jobs from the end of August through to most of September. And we thought we were getting through it onto the other side, but recently we've seen another downturn in regarding work with the local lockdown. But we'll soldier on through and work the best we can, carry on building on our reputation, hopefully increase our numbers, our customer base, which will enable us to attract more members. But I think what this pandemic has taught all of us is that despite what people might think, there's still a good community spirit still around, and people are still willing to help each other. And that's great to see, and it's good that it's cooperatives like all of us here that is at the forefront of this effort. Thank you for letting us speak in front of you.
Oh, that's brilliant. The work that you've been doing in really difficult times, hugely commendable there. And I'd urge anybody who's listening to this call, whenever you come to Cardiff, there's only one taxi company to use. It's Drive. It really is, both for their ethics, but also for the fact that they are our prime Wales cooperative within taxis. So now we've got two more speakers. And if you haven't been motivated enough now, we're going to pass on to our two final speakers. First of all, Laura Newlands. Laura, we're in your hands for the next 5 minutes.
Hello, I am Laura Newlands, the member pioneer for the Co-op food store and funeral care in Beath and Kilbirnie. At the start of lockdown, I think, like a lot of people, I was in a bit of shock as to the change in lifestyle, and I thought, what can I do to try and help in some way, and as in my role as a member pioneer as well, to try and work within the community. I'd been reading reports from other countries that had been using face masks from quite early on, and the reports were saying that, you know, they really helped with the numbers of COVID cases and things like that. So I thought, well, in my other job, I'm a seamstress, I can make some face masks. So this is one here. So I started making them for the local stores. So I made about 80 for the staff in the local shops. And then I made about another 150 to 200 to put in a basket in the local shop for vulnerable people, at risk people in the community, to help themselves. You know, they could have a mask if it would make them feel better for getting out and about to do their weekly shop and things like that. So I put this basket of 200 masks out in the Co-op, and I put a little post on the local Facebook page, and they disappeared within 45 minutes to an hour maybe. And I had hundreds of messages from people saying, have you got any more masks? Could we have one? And suddenly it was bigger than anything that I could manage myself. So I managed to rope in some volunteers. So we had local people helping to sew, we had people donating fabric, we had people donating elastic, because elastic was impossible to get hold of at the time. And all of a sudden we were churning out these masks, and I don't think I've ever been so busy, to be honest. It was non-stop. And then it spread to my other member pioneers within North Ayrshire. They started doing it in their areas, and they got volunteers doing mask sewing in their areas for their local co-ops, and it spread to Greater Glasgow. And I would estimate that we probably, between us all, made somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 masks, if not more. It was hard to keep account. And we were giving them out for free, just for local kind of vulnerable people. But people started, everybody wanted to pay for them. They wanted to give a donation. So we started saying, okay, if you give donations, then what we'll do is we'll make up little goodie bags, which we did with essentials, tea, coffee, sugar, and we started taking them around to local, you know, the shielding, the isolated elderly people in the community that literally just weren't getting out of their house, didn't want to leave their house because they were scared. And we started taking around these little goodie bags and just saying that they were from the sewing ladies. So that's what we did, and it kind of grew arms and legs, I would say, and became incredibly popular. And I've just got to know so many people within the community now, and I think for the future it's just going to help with my job as the member pioneer, who has to, you know, communicate with local causes and help with local funding and things like that. Just making my job so much easier now that I know everybody, and everybody knows me as the face mask lady. And it kept me busy during lockdown, so it all worked out well. And thank you very much for having me to speak today.
No, that's brilliant. I can't believe that when we were chatting in the green room before this, you were wondering whether you'd have enough to say in 5 minutes. That's heck, you know, I think everybody out there who's been listening to that has been inspired by that. And I suspect a lot of people listening to that and the other contributors we've had are probably thinking, yeah, do you know, there's so much of this that is going on at the moment. And how do we amplify this, do more of this in the months ahead, but also learn those lessons, take them forward. Thank you very much indeed. Listen, we got one final contributor in this session, and this is Cherie from Cooperation Town. My apologies, Cherie, I didn't mention you at the outset. Sorry, I missed you off, but we're delighted to bring this to a close now with your contribution. So over to you, Cherie.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation to speak. So yeah, I'm Sherry, I'm from Corporation Town, and Corporation Town is a new network of community-led food co-ops. We are ourselves a workers co-op. We set up in 2019, so way before COVID, to develop an infrastructure that will encourage and enable self-organized groups to start their own food co-ops in neighborhoods up and down the country. Corporation Town food co-ops are small, flexible structures. They're run by neighbors, so they're very hyper-local. Like regular co-ops, they pool resources together to buy food in bulk. But in addition, Corporation Town co-ops set up to benefit from the near endless quantities of surplus food from supermarkets and overproduction that are currently being repurposed by charities and by food banks. Which means that our co-ops are very sustainable, but they're also an extremely cost-effective way to feed our families, making everything much cheaper. During lockdown, Corporation Town, we were able to adapt our existing infrastructure because we already had the contacts and the links in the community and with suppliers to, we adapted it to mass food distribution. And in London alone, just in one part of London, Corporation Town co-ops distributed around 12 tons of free groceries to families on low or no income. That means about 30,000 meals in 6 months, just in one part of North London. We focused on supporting people living in food poverty, so not necessarily people who are shielding or ill, but we didn't means test the people that we supported. It's built on trust, not on transaction, not on, you know, we're not the state. And we activated the network of mutual aiders around us, drivers and so on, who wanted to offer practical solidarity. Now that in this transition point, we are returning to our original purpose of creating a network of community-led food co-ops, not food banks. And we're doing this by working with the groups that previously depended on free groceries to set up their own co-ops in their own neighborhoods. To do that, we developed the Corporation Town Starter Pack, which I'm going to show you, which is a short guide or sort of a helpful tips to demystify the process of starting a food co-op and kind of go through the stages of starting, promoting, organizing a new co-op to people who may have never done anything like this. In addition to that, we created free resources, how to make together a shopping list, how to start your founding meeting, how to make decisions together and so on. And we are speaking to groups from Plymouth to Newcastle, all around the country, and including whole local authorities. For example, we're speaking to Preston City Council about setting up co-ops throughout the city and in various neighborhoods. And we are trying to ensure that we are reaching out people who are already maybe within the cooperative movement or maybe organizing in some other way, but mostly we want to reach out to people beyond our movement. We want to meet people who never organized, who never thought that they can be community organizers, and to show them we can all do this. We want to encourage a new generation or a new way of, new generation of organizers to replace every food bank with a food co-op, to move from charity to solidarity. And we want to see a community-led food co-op on every street in every town. And to do that, of course, we need to raise funds. So we started our end of year fundraiser. And we invite anyone listening to support us in doing this. We are speaking to some funders, but it is going to be community generated. And you can find out more about us and fundraiser on on our website, which is cooperation.town, and join us, join our movement.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much. And I'm really glad to hear as well of your emphasis on the food cooperative rather than the food banter. It's something that's been a big purpose and aim within some of the cooperative parties' work recently, including what we've been doing in Wales as well within our Senate group, how to actually get people working together to put food on the table, to produce, to grow, to deliver, to distribute their own food. And what you're doing, I think, sounds very, very interesting indeed. So listen, can I just, in my short few moments of concluding, first of all, thank you to all of our contributors for some really fascinating and diverse and inspiring examples of what's been going on in response to the recent few months and in response to the virus as well, in terms of self-help, in terms of helping communities, in terms of adapting their existing action as cooperators into responding to what's going on out there, but also the idea about then extending that and actually promoting cooperative ideals and values through what they're doing, but also cooperative membership as well. This is really about putting cooperation into practice and then spreading the gospel of it as well, so more people can do this for themselves.
Hi. Very briefly, my name's Anna. I'm on the next session and I'm the policy officer for the Cooperative Party, but to help make this marginally more seamless, I think we need to hear from Martin next, who is joining us from Brighton to talk about the way that cooperative housing has played a role and can continue to play a role as we exit from lockdown. Martin is from Bunker Housing Cooperative, and I will hand straight over so that you can tell us a bit about what your co-op's been doing through lockdown and some of your achievements, and where you're going next.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I was worried I was going to get left off there. So I guess the first thing to say is that housing has obviously become, the inequality in housing has become exaggerated, and the inequality is much, COVID has exacerbated that. So yeah, my name is Martin. I am one of the founding members of Bunker Housing Cooperative in Brighton. We're a fully mutual housing cooperative for low-income households who are self-building our own social housing on sites that we lease from the local authority. What have we been up to during COVID? Well, the big news is I'm very happy to announce that with persistence and a lot of hard work over 4 years, we have done the impossible. Our cooperative's vision to build high quality homes for low income people has become a reality when we completed our pilot scheme. And we are now the landlord and the tenants of our first 2 beautiful family homes. 2 local families are now off the housing register, out of their insecure, damp and mouldy and overpriced private rented accommodation and into healthy, affordable and secure housing that they collectively own and control. The homes were finished in May and the families moved in on the 1st of June, and my family is one of them, and I'm sitting in one of those houses right now. So these 2 super insulated wooden 3-bedroom eco homes were built using a modular system of cross-laminated timber panels on an ex-garage site leased from Brighton Hove City Council. The homes are providing an affordable, safe, eco-friendly and economically secure environment to live in and a safe place for our children to grow. How did lockdown affect the build? Well, we were lucky. The development was at a stage where work on the site could continue whilst observing social distancing, and members could come in and do some self-finishing as well. Again, working together as a housing cooperative has enabled us to collectively take control of our housing as it can for others. Bunker's membership, our membership is made up of local people who are in housing need with an emphasis on self-employed working households, tradespeople, artists and freelancers. But there are lots of other different co-ops in the city and around the country who with different memberships. As a co-op, we will manage these homes and the other homes that we're going to build as affordable rental properties in perpetuity. and the homes will all be available to households on the local housing register via membership of the co-op. And the rents are currently well below 50% of Brighton and Hove's market rate, but we're looking at ways to bring them down even further. It's been quite a journey, as I'm sure you can imagine. Initially, we were brought together by our children, who got us chatting over our garden fences, where we got talking about our overpriced, damp, mouldy and unsuitable housing, and also our laissez-faire landlords. We were unable to buy and not eligible enough for the scarce social housing available, so we started looking for alternatives. This led us to follow in the footsteps of previous cooperators to self-build our own housing, which is not an easy path to take. But being part of a local and national cooperative network and a movement has been essential and invaluable to us, providing help, support and guidance along the way. We have witnessed Principle 6 in action on so many occasions. We work with a network of organisations and individuals to bring our projects forward, who have offered their time, money and expertise to help us realise our dreams of safe, secure and affordable housing for us and our families. Cooperative principles are at the heart of what we do and how we do it. So what else have we done during the pandemic? We have been quite busy. We've cleared the site, had surveys done and submitted a full planning application for a second site, which is another 5 homes. We've cleared the site, had surveys done and submitted a detailed pre-planning application for a third site of 4 homes. And we've cleared the site, had surveys done and began work on the pre-planning application for our 4th site of a further 6 homes. We've been holding our general meetings and working groups online. This has enabled members, some of our members with different health issues, those who are shielding, some who work for the NHS, etc., to carry on. Everyone can carry on actively participating in the co-op. Later this month, we're also hosting an online community consultation for our 3rd site on Zoom in a space that will be facilitated by a local community organiser. We made a Through the Keyhole film, a virtual tour of our new homes for our other members who've not been able to visit us, which has been a shame. And we moved in during the whole COVID. It was, as you can imagine, quite a strange kind of anticlimax, but at the same time amazing. We continue to be actively involved locally and nationally to spread cooperation as a meaningful pathway to participatory housing and a way that we can resolve our housing situations by truly building back better together and collectively pushing back against being pushed out of our homes, our communities and our cities. Next steps, Bunker is currently working at different stages of development on further sites throughout the city, the ones I explained, and that should bring another 15 cooperative homes. We'll bring another 15 cooperative homes to the city, freeing up another 15 homes within the city. Our pilot project at Plumpton Road, where I'm sitting now, is being used to build a toolkit of database and skills, contacts and information that's already helping many other co-ops who are planning to build in the city over the coming years. And our strategy, finally, I'll just say what our strategy is. I mean, we work with Brighton and Hove Community Land Trust and other community-led housing organisations in the city to grow cooperative and community self-build. We work with Brighton and Hove City Council to maximise the use of available land for cooperative and community self-build developments. We want to reach out beyond, we actively try to reach out beyond, and we do reach out beyond the existing housing cooperative demographic in Brighton and Hove, as even though there are a lot of cooperators, it has a very particular demographic, and we want to demonstrate cooperative housing is something that everyone can, could, and possibly should do. We also want to demonstrate the viability and sustainability of cooperative housing. We work with innovative and sustainable modern methods of construction, and we are showing that there is an alternative pathway to housing for individuals and households in the private sector. So yeah, that's us. Go co-ops. Thanks for listening.
Morning, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for concluding on our list of speakers there as well today. My thanks to all our panelists today, to Eve, Joanna, Nick, Paul, Laura, Cherie, and to Martin as well, for some really inspirational stories about cooperating through COVID. My very best wishes to all of you for the work that you've done, but also for the work you're continuing to do as well as cooperators, but also to the hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of cooperators out there who are doing this sort of work on the ground, putting cooperative practice into Ideal at a time when we really need it. Thank you so much indeed. It's been a great session. Now, I'm going to hand over now to Nick Crotts to take us forward.